Welcome back to the program. So, I want to talk to you tonight about a couple of different topics. One is going to be really weird, and one's going to be very serious. And technically, I guess they could both be pretty serious. And the first one is going to be on China. But before we get into that, I just want to give you some news that you're not going to hear anywhere else because the media doesn't care, because they're not going to want to report it because it's counterintuitive to their left-leaning narrative. Homicides, Chicago, since they started the operation with ICE, down 16%. Shootings in Chicago down 35%. Robberies down 41%. Carjackings down 48%. And transit type of crime is down 20%. That is in less than 60 days. Okay? But you're not going to hear that because the media wants you to think that ICE agents are the Gestapo and that they're out there disappearing people and everything else. So, wanted to give you that first and foremost. Second, I'm getting sick and tired, honestly, of conservatives fighting against conservatives. I'm seeing it more and more, and it's not healthy. It's not conducive to having a unified party moving towards the midterms, and we need to knock it off. And President Trump has now escalated things, and he's now attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene, and he has a new nickname for her, Marjorie Traitor Greene. This is ridiculous, okay? And I'm going to say this. President Trump is wrong to do this, and I'll tell you the reasons why. If you look at the Liberty Scorecard, which is the Bible on how conservative a member of Congress is, she's rated a 100, folks. A 100. Why on earth would you attack someone, regardless of what they say or their personality? I don't care about personalities. I care about how they vote, because that's what's important to the America First MAGA movement. And so she's a 100. Now, there are 435 members of Congress in the U.S. House of Representatives. There are 100 senators. That is a total of 535 members of Congress. Any idea how many have a perfect 100% score? Less than 5. That's right, less than 5. I think there's 3 or 4. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Rand Paul, Thomas Massie, and Byron Donalds. 4 of them. That's it. So you know what the problem is? The problem isn't Marjorie Taylor Greene. The problem is the fact that there's only 4 fucking members of Congress with a perfect conservative score. That is the issue, not Marjorie Taylor Greene or any of these other people. Now, if she was a 60, then yeah, go ahead, attack her all you want. But what happens when she starts to maybe rebel and says, oh, I'm not going to support what Trump does, and then Trump doesn't support her, and someone primaries her, and Trump endorses that person, and that person is a rhino? Huh? I don't want that. So, knock it off, conservatives. Stop fighting against yourselves. Direct that energy towards the left. That's all I'm going to say right now on that. Now, let's get into what I believe is extremely important here, okay? I've said for the longest time, and I will continue to repeat myself, not to be a broken record, China, 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 China. There is no bigger existential threat than the country of China. I don't care about soybean deals. I don't care about fentanyl deals. They're all bullshit because China is evil. China is communist. China is doing everything they can to undermine the United States of America because they want to be the world's greatest power, not us. And that can never happen. So they are the biggest threat. That's why in Chapter 6 of Preserving Liberty, I dedicated it and I called it the China Syndrome. And I went through and talked about everything. Now, in July of this year, President Trump signed an executive order. Now remember, it's an executive order, which means what? It's not law. It's not, quote, preserving liberty. It's not permanent, right? But he said that the Chinese can no longer buy property next to military installations. Well, it sounds wonderful. It looks great on paper. But what's actually happening? CCP-linked entities hold properties adjacent to military installations and bases across the United States of America. Over the past few years, several sensitive properties near U.S. military bases have been purchased by Chinese entities linked to the Chinese Communist Party. Let me stop right there. Anything in the United States that is purchased by the Chinese, 99.9% is linked to the Chinese Communist Party, okay? It's not like there's Chinese businessmen coming in from China that are not connected to the CCP. It doesn't happen, okay? Taiwan, different story. Hong Kong, well, in the past, maybe not now because they took over Hong Kong, right? The 50-year agreement. And so it's not the case. They're CCP. And then it says this. The Chinese foreign investment in the United States since 2022 and a government panel that reviews these foreign purchases of American land and companies for national security risks received a tip that a company called Mine One had bought land within a mile of an air base. The report triggered a national security alert and review. Mine One, which is a majority-owned company by Chinese nationals of the People's Republic of China, purchased 12 acres within 1 mile of Francis E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming, in bright red Wyoming, okay? And began covert operations and converting the property into a cryptocurrency mining facility. Also in 2022, Chinese billionaire Zhang Shangshan, whatever the hell that name is, purchased 23 acres of industrial land in Nashua, New Hampshire for $67 million. The site is close to L3 Harris Technologies near BAE Systems, Electronic Systems Division, and within 30 minutes of New Boston Space Force Station. The sale bypassed CFIUS review despite its proximity to these defense facilities. Now, I have talked about CFIUS in the past many, many times. CFIUS is a government organization for the United States government and the State Department that is filled with Chinese apologists, okay? And it has been for 15 to 20 years. They're the ones that pushed to get the China to become members of the Free Trade Organization, normalizing relationships with them. What's his name? Nixon and his ping pong diplomacy bullshit from the 70s. Okay, CFIUS is an evil organization, and yes, sadly, it's still around. In 2023, Fu Feng Group bought 370 acres 12 miles from Grand Forks Air Force Base. The company's chairman, Li Junchang, served as a deputy at the Shandong Province People's Congress. Anytime you see anything with Chinese and it says the People's, it's automatically the CCP, okay? I want you to understand that. And I'll give you a perfect example. The Chinese, I talk about in Preserving Liberty, they talk about made in the USA, right? And then we talk about made in China, and we talk about made in Mexico and made in India. Well, all the things that said made in China started to get a bad rap, obviously. And so what did they do? They said made in the PRC. Well, what does that mean? Made in the People's, once again, Republic of China. So in other words, they're trying to fudge it and they're trying to hide the Chinese influence here. Same exact thing. So anyone that works for the, quote, peoples of anything, you see what's happening. This person was honored as a provincial model laborer. Grand Forks Air Force Base was being expanded at the time to lead future intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance operations. Fu Feng leadership has repeatedly emphasized the party's role in guiding the company's development. The project was halted after Pentagon objections. So thankfully, the Pentagon was aware and they stopped it. That same year, Chinese real estate tycoon Sun Guangqin excuse me, spent tens of millions of dollars to buy more than 140,000 acres near Laughlin, Nevada Air Force Base, where U.S. military pilots train. Sun is a former captain in the People's Liberation Army, which is basically the military apparatus that created COVID and bioterrorism weapons and everything else. They are the worst of the worst, okay? Close links to the CCP. No, not close links. They are the CCP. His senior advisors and former PLA generals, and he operates dozens of CCP grassroots branches. The land includes a private runway and sits between Laughlin Air Force Base and the U.S.-Mexico border. Sun is the wealthiest businessman in Zhejiang Province, a longtime CCP member. Remember, Zhejiang Province in northwest China. What do I talk about in the China Syndrome in Chapter 6? That's right. That's where all the Uyghur Muslims are making all these products in slave labor camps and then putting them up on Temu and some of these others. Some of these problematic purchases are harder to track back to the Chinese Communist Party because they are carried out through layers of shell companies. This is what they do. And intermediary entities, sometimes using U.S. or even Canadian residents to further obscure CCP involvement. One example is the network of companies connected to Esther Mai and her husband Cheng Hu, which corporate and property records show has acquired land beside several sensitive U.S. military installations. One of these properties, the Knob Noster Trailer Park in Missouri, sits directly outside Whiteman Air Force Base, home of the B-2 Spirit nuclear-capable stealth bomber fleet. Wow, what could go wrong there, huh? That Missouri property was purchased in August 2017 through a shell company, Property Solutions 3603 LP, and transferred 2 months later to a Georgia firm controlled by the couple. Shortly afterward, another entity entered they managed and acquired the Pecan Grove Mobile Home Park in Oglethorpe, Georgia, about 35 miles from Robins Air Force Base and roughly 50 miles from Fort Benning in Georgia. Fort Benning is one of the biggest military installations in the country. Depending on how one defines close to or, quote, a defense-sensitive location, these purchases could be written off as just coincidental. Yeah, right. But the fact is that a wealthy couple living in Canada chose remote trailer parks as their investment target in an unusual and difficult place to explain through ordinary market logic. Corporate, legal, and media records also connect this couple to organizations and activities that raise serious questions about ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Esther May and Cheng Hu are active members of the New Federal State of China, the political movement launched by Mao Gao, who has repeatedly acknowledged past work with Chinese intelligence services. Now, you may remember when I had the website, I was attacked viciously by doing interviews with the New Federal State of China. That is something that Steve Bannon was behind as well. Now, I have always known them to be anti-China. That's why the people that run it are not allowed to be in the country because they're supposedly anti-CCP. They used to come to the Turning Point events and things like that. I got attacked because I did multiple interviews talking the truth about the dangers of China, and the next thing you know, I'm getting hit with DDoS attacks on jbushow.com when I had it. So, I don't know. We'll have to do some more research into that. But I wanted to point this out because it's really important. President Trump may have signed in this July of 2025, an executive order saying that you can't buy any more, Chinese businesses near military installations. Well, that's great. What about the fact that they're still there? What about the fact that they're hiding it through these shell companies? This is really, really dangerous. We're in an arms race, not just an AI race. We're in an arms race. We're in a drones race. We're in a submarine race. We're in all kinds of race. We are in a technology race against the Chinese Communist Party. And yet, we have allowed them to set up shop next to our military installations? This can't be. This can't be. So, I'm going to put this out there. I want you to share it. I'm going to try to get attention to President Trump and his administration. And Congress needs to act because these executive orders, look, there's been over 300 executive orders signed, I think, maybe 310, 320. I don't know what the number is. 28 out of 300 have become law, and that's only because those 28 were included in the one big beautiful bill. But the really important ones, like this and many others, can all be reversed. That's why we got to stop fighting each other and start kicking the shit out of the left. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.